Hey, it's Michael, and welcome to week 5. So, we have just explored something, and I want to say that I am being a little bit tricky with you all. But hopefully, as we get into this week and we start to really talk about language, that you might understand something that you were attempting to do. And by doing it, you could struggle, of course. You could try to understand and learn these tags, which many of you, may have glanced at this. I would say because it is maybe new to you, you might be a little bit intimidated by this, but you might be afraid of using something incorrectly, and all these things are reasonable. Some of these, by the way, have very interesting attributes that make them do special things. But for the most part, they are just words. And that was the trick. This week wasn't necessarily about learning HTML. And I was happy for anyone who might have asked, like, why are we doing this? Actually, what we were doing is using a controlled vocabulary. So a controlled vocabulary is extremely important for your topics. So in this case, if you're going to organize music, for example, you'll want to use some terms that have been invented that people understand, such as an album. Okay, that term exists to represent a concept of a group of songs. Okay, and then you have the word songs, and then you have the word playlist, and then you have, anyway, there's a bunch of words that we have created to indicate grouping and meaningful structures around things that are pretty vast and would be difficult to manage if you hadn't done that. HTML is a fabulous example. If you look back at it now, you're like, wow, this is not that many words that actually have created so much value in our lives. It's hard to quantify it, right? That the marking up of text and images, etc., and being able to deliver that anywhere through a browser, it is really just a matter of semantics. Now, the problem is that as we got focused more and more on design, we left semantics behind. And many of you mentioned something about how accessibility is a big deal now. All the words and tags that you use, if you want to go into the job of being a consultant in accessibility, are extremely important. All the tags, the more meaningful, the better, and the more semantically correct, the better. We haven't gotten into a few like nav or header and footer, but you're welcome to use those. I mean, they're just words. Your one record can have a header and a footer. So we're not leaving this work behind. I will just look at Joseph's. One thing that really did seem to be missed, and I wish I could do a better job, I don't know exactly why, is to use these words and then use the same words to mark it up. This to me is just really easy to understand for me, and it also indicates some things, like in this case, Joseph needs to add some more data because this isn't really quite enough to really describe a piece of furniture. And that's what you should be thinking about. Whatever your topic is, here's the data you're going to mark up, and here's the hierarchy that you're going to use to represent it. I also notice many are looking at the representation of it. That isn't the need for a controlled vocabulary. What we're really hoping for is to see what groups do you have? There's a lot of grouping tags. So I think there's still work to be done. You have another week before you need to submit this assignment, but I hope now you're kind of having gotten a taste of it. You may either need to relearn things that you didn't understand about HTML, or if you're new to it, use it as meaningfully as possible, which is what I'm going to be looking for. I want to see that these words used in this with this controlled vocabulary actually makes sense if I read it. If there's just a lot of lists, or I would say, sorry to pick on you, Joseph, but you're doing great, by the way. This is all fine. I do think this idea of having hierarchies that follow each other is also something you could do a little bit better at. So there is no right answer. There is no proper way of marking up the HTML, although I'm pretty sure that I did use ChatGPT to mark up my HTML semantically, and it didn't do a terrible job, didn't do a great job either. So either way, the whole point is just what choices do you make and how do you organize things? So if you need any more help with this, just please let me know. I think everybody's doing fine. Let me get you into week 5 where we really take the deep dive into words. So 5 is nouns, and I'm using nouns on purpose because we're going to get to verbs next week. So, as usual, let me go ahead. I'm going to add my video for this. I haven't added it yet, but I will. There's a fun movie to watch. And then you start to get into words, and more words. And what I'm trying to represent here is these words and categorization of words that are going to use to group your data are extremely important, and the hierarchies are extremely important. So take a look at some of these things I've put out there. If you haven't heard of the word taxonomies, there's a fun little video here, as well as with mine, taxonomy in 60 seconds. So taxonomies and full on, we're right in the midst of what information architects spend most of their time doing, finding the right words, finding the right vocabularies. And these are some exercises. These should be pretty quick, but and one more, and I'm doing keywords, which is the thing at the top of the page in a lot of websites. Keywords might not be as useful as they used to be, but what's interesting about them is the more unique, the better. So that means if you're, sorry, Joseph, I'll just use an example. If your topic is furniture and you have in your keywords furniture, that might not be the best word. What you're looking for is a word like credenza. Okay, I just came up with that one. Anyway, unique words that describe your content are going to be picked up upon and used more effectively to gather to entice search engines or for SEO than other words. Now, it's even better if the data itself has that word credenza in it, and then the things that you are used to spider will find that. As of week 5, by adding that structure in HTML, you have now created information. The interesting thing is it is not necessarily readable or interesting to a human being, but it is absolutely readable by a computer because they actually don't care how it's represented on the screen. They're only looking at the tags. The CSS or the display things are not that important. So if you haven't yet, clean up your database, add more fields. I think a lot of people were missing images. Just put a field called picture and then you're done, basically. But I want to see that if you do have imagery that represents your stuff, that it's there, and more fields, and especially this week it's to work on these grouping fields. So if you don't have them, the goal of this week is to add them. And then at the end, we should have a pretty robust record that will be repeated many, many times. And maybe I'll get back to this. One thing about this markup is that the more complicated it is, you're going to repeat it 3 times. And the goal of that is to get you to simplify it, not make it so complicated. It doesn't have to be, more is not more sometimes when it comes to markup. More meaningful is more. And more organizational grouping is more. So think more about the words you're using, because as you repeat the thing, it does get noisy. Hopefully that makes sense. Reach out to me if it doesn't. I'm more than happy to chat over this. I think you guys are doing great. Thank you, Joseph, for being my guinea pig for this week of showing some things that you were working on. Really do appreciate you looking at each other's work. We're all in this journey together, and oddly enough, we're going to start to converge fairly soon, that the things that we're working on as individuals really are also what kind of we're working on as a group. So hopefully that starts to become more evident as the weeks go by. So welcome to week 5.